The champagne flute in my hand suddenly felt like it weighed 50 pounds. My fingers locked around the stem as Marissa's voice cut through the outdoor cocktail chatter. "Oh, look, everyone! Alexis showed up. Guess they're letting anyone register these days, even people who can't afford their own rent." The bubbles in my glass went flat as laughter rippled through the crowd gathered on the manicured lawn. My vision tunneled to the white estate behind them. 3 stories of Georgian architecture worth more than most people earn in 10 lifetimes. The property I'd researched for 6 months. The one I'd quietly positioned myself to acquire while everyone here assumed I was still struggling to make ends meet. My Aunt Jenna turned, martini in hand, surveying me like I was a stain on her designer dress. "Sweetheart, this is a serious auction. You know that, right? They don't do payment plans." I tasted copper as I bit the inside of my cheek. The urge to snap back flared hot, but I'd learned silence long ago. Let them talk. Let them assume. Let them build their own stage for the humiliation I was about to deliver. "My name is Alexis, I'm 29, and I'm a real estate analyst. This is the story of how I made my family watch me buy their dream." The mockery started years before this auction. After Mom died when I was 17, my relatives treated me like a charity case they couldn't wait to forget. When I left for college with 2 duffel bags and a partial scholarship, Aunt Jenna told everyone I'd be back within a semester, begging for help like her mother always did. I didn't come back. Instead, I worked 3 jobs while finishing my economics degree. I spent my 20s building a real estate research consultancy from my studio apartment, cold calling developers and analyzing market trends until my eyes burned. The first year, I made $31,000. The second year, $47,000. By year 5, I was clearing 6 figures, advising investors on multi-million-dollar acquisitions. Last year, I brokered a deal that netted me a $2.3 million commission. Combined with my accumulated savings and strategic investments over 7 years, I'd built enough capital to make the acquisition without financing. But my family didn't know any of this. I'd stopped attending gatherings after the 100th passive-aggressive comment about my little hobby job. To them, I was still the broke teenager who left with nothing. They had no idea I'd quietly become one of the most sought-after analysts on the West Coast. The Willow Crest estate had been my obsession since it hit the market. $12 million starting bid, 47 acres, historically significant architecture. My relatives had been bragging about acquiring it for months, talking at every family event about how the Reed name would finally mean something again once they owned it. I'd submitted my qualification documents anonymously through my LLC. The auction house knew exactly who I was and what I could afford. My family had no clue I was even registered. Now, standing on this lawn while my cousin Trevor smirked at me over his bourbon, I felt the weight of every insult, every dismissal, every prediction of my failure pressing against my chest like a physical force. "Alexis!" Marissa appeared beside me, fake concern dripping from her voice. "Listen, I know you probably came to see the property, but the bidding starts at $6 million. Maybe you should just, watch from outside the tent. Save yourself the embarrassment." The registration woman called from the entrance. "All qualified bidders, please take your seats. We begin in 5 minutes." I started walking toward the white tent where chrome chairs faced an auctioneer's podium. "Did you hear me?" Marissa called after me. "You can't just—" I showed my registration paddle to the attendant at the entrance. Sleek black composite, number 69 embossed in silver. The attendant smiled warmly. "Right this way, Miss Reed." Behind me, Marissa's voice died mid-sentence. Inside the tent, maybe 60 people occupied the seats. Developers, investors, established families with old money and new ambitions. I found a spot 3 rows from the back, far enough from my relatives to avoid conversation, close enough to watch their faces during what came next. The auctioneer, a silver-haired man in a navy suit, stepped to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Willow Crest Estate Auction. Our opening bid today is $6 million. Paddles ready." The energy in the tent shifted immediately. This was real money, serious competition. "6 million, the auctioneer announced. "Do I have 6 million? 20 paddles shot up, including my Aunt Jenna's from the second row. "6 million, now 6.5. 6.5, do I have it?" 15 paddles. The crowd was thinning fast. 7 million. 10 paddles. My family was still in, whispering confidently among themselves, 7.5, 8 million. 5 bidders remained. Aunt Jenna's paddle stayed raised, her posture rigid with determination. This was it for them, the big moment they'd been planning for months. 8.5, 9 million. 3 bidders. The tent had gone quiet except for the auctioneer's rhythmic calls and the rustle of programs as people leaned forward to see who was left. 9.5. Aunt Jenna's paddle lifted. Her husband touched her arm and they had a quick, tense conversation. I knew the calculation they were doing. They'd stretched themselves thin for this, maybe even borrowed against other properties. 10 million, 2 bidders. My aunt and a developer in the front row I recognized from industry conferences. 10.5. The developer raised his paddle. Aunt Jenna hesitated for just 3 seconds. But those seconds told me everything. They'd hit their limit. This was as far as their resources could take them. Trevor leaned over to whisper something to his mother. I saw her shake her head, defeated but trying to maintain composure. The auctioneer raised his gavel. 10.5, going once. This was the moment. Everything I'd worked for, every late night, every risk, every time someone told me I'd fail. It all compressed into the simple gesture of raising my paddle. 10.5, going twice. I lifted my paddle smoothly, calmly, like I was flagging down a waiter. 11 million from bidder 69. The tent erupted. Heads whipped around. Gasps and exclamations overlapped as everyone tried to locate bidder 69. When they found me, the girl who'd been laughed at on the lawn 30 minutes ago, the expressions were worth more than any property. Aunt Jenna's face went sheet white. Marissa's mouth literally hung open. Trevor stood up from his chair like he'd been shocked. 11 million, the auctioneer repeated, his voice carrying a note of excitement. Do I have 11.5? Silence. Complete, suffocating silence. The developer in the front row slowly shook his head and lowered his paddle. 11 million going once. The auctioneer scanned the crowd, going twice. My heart hammered, but my face stayed neutral. Years of poker faces in business negotiations had taught me never to show emotion until the deal was sealed. The gavel came down with a crack that echoed through the tent. Sold to bidder 69 for $11 million. Applause broke out, the polite, stunned applause of people witnessing something unexpected. Auction staff immediately approached me with tablets and preliminary paperwork, directing me toward the estate's private office, where we would finalize the purchase. My family sat frozen in their seats like someone had paused them mid-frame. I stood gathering my bag and walked down the aisle toward the exit. As I passed my aunt's row, I made brief eye contact with her. She looked like she wanted to say something, demand an explanation, accuse me of lying, anything to make sense of what just happened. I gave her the smallest smile, not smug, not cruel, just knowing. "Excuse me," I said politely, stepping past her into the aisle. In the estate's private office, the closing process took 90 minutes. Wire transfers, verification documents, title insurance, property inspection schedules. The estate manager, a professional woman named Patricia, kept glancing at me with barely concealed admiration. "I have to say," Patricia commented as I signed the final document, "that was the most dramatic auction close I've seen in 15 years. "Dramatic wasn't the goal," I replied, handing back her pen. "But I won't lie, it felt good." She laughed. "Based on the faces I saw in that tent, I'd say several people are having a very complicated afternoon." 90 minutes later, with all documents signed and the wire transfer confirmed, I glanced through the office window. I saw my relatives still clustered near their cars in the parking area. They were clearly waiting for me, probably ready to demand explanations or accuse me of fraud or God knows what else. Patricia noticed my gaze. Would you like to exit through the service entrance? We can arrange. No, I said, standing and smoothing my dress. I'm good. I walked out the main entrance and directly toward my family. The afternoon sun felt warm on my shoulders, and I realized I wasn't nervous, not even a little. Aunt Jenna stepped forward first. Alexis, what the hell was that? That was me buying a property, I replied evenly. With what money? Trevor demanded. You don't have $11 million. This has to be some kind of mistake. No mistake. Everything cleared. The estate is mine. Marissa's face had gone from pale to flushed. You're lying. You've been broke your entire life. We know you've been struggling. You know nothing about my life, I interrupted quietly. You haven't asked about my life in over a decade. You just assumed. Aunt Jenna crossed her arms. So what? You won the lottery. Got some sugar daddy. How does someone like you suddenly afford... Someone like me? I kept my voice calm, but something in my tone made her stop talking. You mean someone who worked 80-hour weeks while you vacationed in Tuscany? Someone who built a 7-figure consulting business while you gossiped about my failures at Sunday brunch? The parking lot had gone quiet. Even the valet attendants were pretending not to listen while absolutely listening. I've been successful for years, I continued. I just stopped trying to prove it to people who wanted me to fail. This estate? It's going to be the headquarters for my new development firm. I'm creating a mentorship program for women in real estate who started with nothing, like I did. Trevor made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a scoff. This is insane. You can't just... I already did. I pulled my car keys from my bag. And honestly, the best part wasn't the property. It was watching you all realize you never actually knew me at all. I walked to my car, a modest sedan I'd had for 3 years because I preferred investing my money over flaunting it, and drove away from the estate I now owned. In my rearview mirror, my family stood in the parking lot still trying to process what happened. That evening, sitting in my apartment with a glass of wine, I pulled up the estate's digital file on my laptop. Architectural plans, renovation possibilities, the vision I'd been building for months. My phone buzzed with texts. Evan, my financial advisor. Congratulations, Lex. You earned this. My business partner. Saw the news. Iconic. Call me tomorrow. 3 reporters requesting interviews about the surprise acquisition. The auction was public record, and apparently news of my surprise win had already hit real estate industry channels. I ignored them all for now. Instead, I opened a blank document and started outlining the mentorship program. The real reason I bought Willow Crest, a place where young women starting with nothing could learn from someone who'd actually walked that path. The revenge wasn't the estate. It was building something meaningful from the ashes of every doubt they'd placed in my way. 2 weeks after the auction, I returned to Willow Crest and stood in the main hall. I watched contractors install the sign above the entrance. Read Development Initiative, where potential meets opportunity. Patricia approached with a clipboard. The first mentorship cohort applications are already coming in, 43 in 2 weeks. That's incredible. People are inspired by your story. She hesitated. Your family hasn't tried to contact you? Once. I didn't answer. I looked up at the vaulted ceiling, the restored chandelier catching afternoon light. This place isn't about them anymore. It never really was. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Alexis, this is Aunt Jenna. We need to talk about what happened. The family wants to understand. I read it twice, then deleted it. Over the following months, Jenna sent 3 more messages, each one asking to meet, to explain, to work things out. I deleted every one without responding. Eventually, the messages stopped coming. We haven't spoken since the auction, and I have no intention of changing that. Some relationships aren't worth salvaging. Trevor tried calling twice in the first week but gave up when I didn't answer. Marissa sent a single email with the subject line, "We need to talk," which I marked as spam. The rest of the family remained silent, presumably too embarrassed to reach out after years of dismissing me. Some conversations don't deserve to happen. Some people don't earn access to your growth. I turned to Patricia. Ready to tour the education wing? Absolutely. We walked through halls that used to represent my family's dream of legacy and status. Now they represented something better. Proof that the best revenge isn't making people regret underestimating you. It's building something so meaningful that their opinions stop mattering entirely.